The fighter jet that took down an object over Lake Huron yesterday took off in Madison. That's what a top security official said last night.
This marks the third day in a row that an unidentified object was shot down over North American airspace. NBC 15's Michelle Beck is live now in Madison. So Michelle, what do we know about how Wisconsin is involved in all of this?
Hey, John and Maria, as you may know, the Wisconsin Air National Guard's 115th Fighter Wing is based here at Truax Field. In a briefing yesterday, we got insight from a commander at NORAD, that's the U.S.-Canadian organization overseeing airspace. Leading up to the takedown over Lake Huron, General Glenn Van Herk said the fighters came from Wisconsin's Air National Guard. Officials at Truax Field declined to speak with us about their involvement due to the sensitivity of this operation, but we can tell you that the 115th Fighter Wing based here saw its final F-16 depart last year. Meanwhile, Minnesota's governor tweeted Sunday night, bringing his state's Air National Guard into the picture. He wrote that a Duluth-based unit flying F-16s, they are the ones who took off from Madison. Again, all that coming from the governor of Minnesota. And then while I reached out to NORAD spokesperson for clarification about these two units, I was told to refer back to the original statement from the NORAD general Sunday night. For now, live in Madison, Michelle Beck, NBC 15 News.
This as the National Security Council provides an update on the unidentified high-altitude objects recently shot down. Speaking at today's White House briefing, NSC spokesman John Kirby said the operations were done out of an abundance of caution. He added that the Biden administration is working to have people collect debris from the objects.
I think it's important to remind the objects in Alaska and Canada are in pretty remote terrain, ice and wilderness, all of that making it difficult to find them in winter weather. The object over Lake Huron now lies in what is probably very deep water.
Officials confirm none of the recent objects poses a direct threat to people on the ground.